Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. My name is Ilan, and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host, Jeremy. How are we?
I'm great, mate. Recording on this lovely, sunny Sunday afternoon. Hopefully it follows through to the week ahead and we get a bit of sunshine. Can feel it in the air. So I'm good. I'm buzzing. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I echo the same sentiments. The weather's been fantastic, especially after the last week. It's been freezing. Feels like we're back in July, but the warm weather is coming in. I'm very excited.
Fill me up with that shit. I think it's well and truly needed.
Need a good dose of vitamin D.
Get it into the bloody veins. It's about time. So
Exactly.
Let's do it. Mate, today we're talking about the right person and the wrong time. It's one that's been floating around social media a lot recently, and it's one that comes up really often when we think about traveling, when we think about dating, when we think about compatibility, when we think about emotional availability or unavailability. The right person at the wrong time. Do you believe in it?
No, I do not. I don't believe that there is a right person at the wrong time. If it's the wrong time, it's the wrong person. It's simple as that. But it's not as simple to say that, because for a lot of people, they might be grieving someone who they believe was the right person for them. But due to, a bunch of other circumstances that may not be their fault, they are grieving this person. They are ruminating on what could have been. But that's just my belief, and we'll unpack it further. What about you?
Yeah, look, I think 18 to 21-year-old Jeremy used to believe that right person, wrong time was a thing, that you could really fall deeply for someone and form this incredible bond with someone, but it might not be the right time for you to enter something with them. 24-year-old Jeremy now believes that it's absolutely bullshit, like you agree, mate. And I think it's bullshit because time and time again, we see beautiful relationships flourish, and they flourish through hardship. They flourish through times that are testing. And that's love. And that's love with the right person. And too often we see people going on their holidays and they have been with someone for an extended amount of time, but they have this holiday coming up, whether it's an exchange period, whether it's a holiday for 3 months, whatever it might be, and they see that as an excuse for potentially ending things or for potentially maybe not going into something, regardless of how much they have, formed a connection with this person. They see an external factor as a roadblock to what is stopping them from continuing the romance and the relationship which they have had. So my question to that is, either you don't like this person enough to make it something formidable, or you've just been complacent and comfortable and have felt convenienced with them this entire time. So this external factor is just an excuse for you to say goodbye. So rather than labeling it right person, wrong time, I agree. I think it's just the wrong person, and there's just a narrative of calling it right person, wrong time to just sugarcoat the issue a little bit and make you feel a little bit better about saying goodbye to something that perhaps wasn't that formidable to start with.
Yeah, I suppose I'd agree. I think there's an element of it which is more difficult than an ordinary breakup, because the difference is when you break up with someone, generally you're breaking up with that person because there was a deficiency, something about that person, whether we like to admit it or not. That's usually why breakups occur. But when you argue that it's the right person in the wrong time, you're not suggesting that the reason you two didn't work out is because of that person. You're arguing you didn't work out because of some sort of external circumstance, right? And I think that can create a lot of difficulty for a lot of people, because in their minds, they're believing that, if it wasn't for this one circumstance, we would live happily ever after. And the problem there is that you kind of convince yourself that you haven't lived out the fantasy of what could have been. And for you, you don't actually get much closure from that situation. It's really, really painful.
So painful. I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast has felt that before, where you go on a holiday away and maybe you meet someone and you form this incredible connection with them. And I say connection because I don't believe it's love at first sight. I don't really think love at first sight is a thing. And we'll dive into this potentially later on in the episode as well as to why we don't believe in that. But you form this connection with someone and you think this is incredible, but what a pity that we live on opposite sides of the world, or we don't live in the same vicinity, or this person is continuing to travel on, but I'm staying put. And there's a million and one different reasons why it cannot work out in your mind. And you just think, wow, like this is the right person, but it's not the right time for this. And it's something we just convince ourselves about time and time again. I've done it myself. I'm sure you guys listening have done it yourself as well. But it's actually been so much more liberating now to just look at things as what it was maybe just something beautiful for a time period, for a season, for a moment in time. And it doesn't mean there was a narrative behind it about right person, wrong time. It's just not the right person, and that's okay. This person can be great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the right person for you.
Sounds like you tapped into a bit of radical acceptance. The idea that you can't control things that are out of your control, and you've accepted that. You haven't formulated this theory in your head that they were the right person, but what you have said, which is quite based in reality, is that they were great for you for that said period of time, and now they're not in your life. And there's nothing more to that. You can still appreciate the good moments without having that destroy your mental health about what could have been. And I think that's a really, really good point. You mentioned something about love at first sight, and I think that's a really, really good point that you mentioned. I think a lot of people get stuck in this philosophy of right person, wrong time, because we overvalue the honeymoon period with the person we're with. We overvalue fantasy. We overvalue what we would see as mutual attraction. We don't overvalue compatibility. We don't overvalue commitment. And these are very, very important tenets of what makes someone the right person. And I think oftentimes when we see love at first sight, what we're really referring to is mutual attraction. The mutual attraction, the chemistry, it's palpable. I think for a lot of people, we can get seduced by that. We can be so allured by the feelings that come about. And we haven't had enough time to actually assess whether this person is truly right for us. Have we gone through the 2, 3, 4 years and make the assessment after those 2, 3, 4 years whether that person is truly right for us? Have you gone through the trials and tribulations with that person to then truly make the assumption and make the judgment call that they are right for you? Because if you're only basing your judgment of whether they're the right person for you purely off your mutual attraction that you had with that person and maybe that honeymoon-esque relationship that you had. And oftentimes we see this maybe when you're on a holiday or you're on exchange where you see this person, but not through real life goggles. You see them through rose-colored goggles because you're going to get honeymoon period regardless of anyone when you meet them. But when you compound that with a novel experience like being on exchange or being on a holiday or being somewhere where there is an expiration date, we overvalue the mutual attraction and undervalue the compatibility, I believe.
It's a beautiful point because, like you said, when you are in that holiday-esque period, you just see the person for what they are in the positive light. But, so much growth and true love and connection and deep vulnerability is explored in those trials and tribulations, those testing times. And that doesn't need to mean you guys have to go through immense hardship together, but it can be simple things, just going to the supermarkets and you had this idea to maybe cook something together, but the ingredients that you would normally buy aren't there, and working out how do you go about navigating that scenario. Or you're going on a day trip together, you're driving down a freeway and all of a sudden your car breaks down, or you pop a tire and you have to change that tire. How do you go about working through that adverse scenario together? I think this is what we're referring to when we're talking about, trials and tribulations of a relationship. And you probably tend to experience more of that during a time period where you're actually together for a longer time period and not just on a holiday together. And this is where I'm referring to those holiday-esque type of relationships, those relationships where, maybe you've only ever done long distance with a person, and the times in which you see each other might be a couple weeks at a time, a day or two at a time. You haven't gone through that time period of just living mundane life together as is. It's always been like holiday-esque type of time. And I think that comes with caution. And I'm aware that this is a bit of a diversion from the topic of right person, wrong time. This is mainly talking about a holiday-esque type of relationship and romance, and not something that is set in stone and mundane. But I think we can often think about right person, wrong time in this context as well, because we see someone that, you know, we've maybe been developing a relationship with that might be that more holiday-esque type of relationship, and it reaches a roadblock. It reaches one of those points where something comes to the surface and you have to work something out together that is a little bit challenging. And, you know, it might be something that you guys have been avoiding bringing up and talking about. And it therefore might lead you on to think about, well, potentially this is the right person at the wrong time. Wrong time because we live apart. We're not together. We're not experiencing mundane life together. But in essence, it's not necessarily the right person or the wrong time. It's just that they're just not the right person entirely for you. And that has been noticed because things have started to come to the surface and you've worked out, well, the way in which we go about working things out together is just not compatible. And, you know, I want to ask you about, you know, compatibility, because you wrote something there in our show notes, which is really quite interesting about, you know, 4 key points about what defines the right person, of which compatibility is one of those. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So Matthew Hussey, who is a beacon of knowledge when it comes to this subject area, he labels 4 levels of importance in kind of close relation to what makes someone the right person. And they go in, there's a bit of a hierarchy. So the first level of importance is admiration, the admiration you have for that person. The second...
What does that mean?
So you admire aspects about that person. As an example, if I have a sense of respect for you. Maybe you're someone who's really ambitious and I admire that quality about you. I love the fact that you are as disciplined with your work, with your activities, with your hobbies. That's like the first tenet. The second one is, because you can admire someone and not have attraction for them.
Sure.
The second level of importance is mutual attraction. Is what I mentioned earlier. We will overvalue this the most. It's why we overvalue the whole idea of love at first sight. The mutual attraction, the chemistry. The lust, all of those things. The third one, which is more important than that, is commitment. And I actually want to quickly divert before I continue on to the fourth one. The thing with commitment, and this kind of nicely relates to the point you made before, the whole thing about right person, wrong time, it doesn't even have to occur when you're on exchange or you're on holiday. It could happen at home. So as an example, you might be seeing someone for quite a few weeks, a couple months, and everything is just going amazingly. You think you've got the same values, you get on like a house on fire, but then they tell you that they're not looking for something long-term because they're still really damaged and bruised from their last long-term relationship.
Horrible thing to hear when you're a few months in, isn't it?
Correct. And maybe they've told you that from the get-go. And maybe they've told you, look, like, I just want to see how I am, but I give you no promises that I can commit. And maybe you've told them, look, I'm ready to commit to something long-term. And there's this whole concept psychologically known as commitment readiness. So people who are, high on the commitment readiness scale, they're the ones who, they know what they want. They want a relationship. Maybe they want a long-term partner. But people who are on the lower end of commitment readiness, they might just want to date casually. They might just want to have fun. They don't want to have anything locked in long-term. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because oftentimes we believe that someone who might be low on commitment readiness, so let's say you're high on commitment readiness, but you're seeing someone who's low on that scale, and you're convincing yourself that only if they were higher on that scale would it'd be the right time. Only if they broke up with their partner a year earlier before they met you. So you're telling yourself all these things as though they're the right person, it's just the wrong time. Because if it was the right time, they'd be more ready to commit to you. And I think that's a really, really crucial point. Because ultimately, what I hear when I hear that idea of they're not ready to commit to me because they're too, psychologically bruised from their prior relationship, I hear that they're just not the right person for you. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can't there's no world in which you can sell to me why they're the right person for you, because they're not. And you might be overvaluing, as I said, those other qualities, the mutual attraction, the chemistry. So that's a really huge and second most important kind of in that hierarchy is the commitment.
And with the commitment, it's like, why would you want to try to convince yourself that this person is the right one for you when they're not wanting to commit to you? Why do you want to? It's like them being the doctor in the GP clinic and you're constantly sitting in the waiting room, waiting around for them. Why would you want to be that person in the waiting room, waiting for that doctor to come out and say, I'm ready for you now. Let's maybe try this again. Why do you want to be plan B? Why would you want to do that? Like, wake up. If you want to be plan B, you need to take a good hard look at yourself and go tell yourself that you are better than this and you need to be with someone that wants to be with you as much as you want to be with them. Being plan B is bullshit, and we don't want to be with that person. And if you're constantly convincing yourself that that is okay, then I think that's just having a false pedestalization of the person that you want to be with. You're seeing them in this light that is rubbish, that is fake, that is superficial, and that is not real. And you need to ask yourself why. At the end of the day, why are you seeing this person in such a superior light that they are better than you, even when they are not prioritizing you as much as they are prioritizing themselves? That is the key question to ask. Why would you want to be with the person that is not ready to commit to you, even though you're ready to commit to them? That is number one sign that they are definitely the wrong person for you.
And that's why I love these kind of 4 pillars of importance, because they cross off these things. Because if you are deficient in any one of these, they are not the right person for you. Because the last thing is compatibility, and compatibility can be, and this is the most important level of importance, it can mean a lot of things. It can be compatibility of values, compatibility of life direction, ambition, and goals. It can be so many things. And that's crucial, right? Like you could honestly, with compatibility, you could forego it as the least most important quality at the start when all the mutual attraction is high, but it comes and
because you think, oh, we just love each other, we're
love's
lustful
enough
for each other, we're into each other, then that's enough.
Correct. So the thing is, anytime you hear a friend go, well, it's the right person, the wrong time for whatever reason, chances are any of the reasons they cite will be either A, something to do with admiration. Probably not, because I'll admire that person. It'll be not to do with mutual attraction, because that will be kind of high, but it will be with commitment or compatibility.
Yeah.
Because the truth of the matter is, if you're seeing someone overseas and you're on exchange and you're breaking up with them because there's an expiration date on it, it's because neither of you or one of you aren't willing to commit. And that's fine. That's perfectly reasonable. So you can't give me this idea that they're the right person, because if they were, they'd commit. Like they'd be the right person if they were truly compatible with you.
Do you think with compatibility that there are some levels of compatibility that can be foregoed? Because you mentioned that there's different elements of compatibility. You know, are you compatible with career? Potentially, are you compatible with your life trajectory, your visions, what you want out of life, kids, marriage, religion, traditional values, whatever it may be? There are all these different branches that come off of the root tree of compatibility, which you mentioned. So do you think there are maybe some branches that need to be considered more than others, and that can be enough to maybe destruct what you guys have?
Shit, yeah. Like, if you want kids and the person you're seeing doesn't want kids, that's a pretty big, incompatibility, right? If you have specific dietary requirements and they don't, and you're less adventurous with your palate and they are, I guess you could probably compromise on that.
Yeah.
But the big deal breakers in life, when I think of, marriage, kids, life direction, like, do you want to stay in the same country, or do you want to stay in the one city so you're close to your family? Or do you want to travel the world for the next 10, 15 years or live abroad? Those are big, big questions to ask, because they're goals and values that you hold dear in your heart. And if the person is aligned with you on those things, great, you're probably compatible. But it's all well and good to be compatible with one or two things. You want to be compatible with all the major things that you value.
Yeah.
As you said, the religious aspects, the traditional aspects, the life goals, how many kids you want, whether you want to get married or not want to get married, whether you want to stay in the same place or move abroad. These are all really important things. And I'm a massive fan of writing things down. I think it's worth spending an hour of your day writing out what are the most important things to you, what are the values and compatible, or rather, what are the things that you hold dearest in your heart? Because what are your non-negotiables? What are the things you're not willing to sacrifice on? because you'll be able to identify them quite quickly. But I think that's probably the best thing to do. But I do agree there are certain things that you can probably change things on, but they're not your fundamental things.
For sure.
But that's kind of what I believe in. I got a question to ask you. Why do you think, though, we do get so fixated on right person, wrong time? Why is it that we struggle to let go?
I think we struggle to let go because for a lot of us, it might be the familiar path. It might be the path that is more trotted on, that we know the way in which things develop. We know what to expect. It's comfortable for us. As humans, we love comfort. We are creatures of habit. We love doing what we're used to doing. And taking a new path is fucking scary at times. And especially with a new person, that can be really scary. So if you've been in a relationship with someone for 3-4 years and they decide that they want to go away overseas and travel or do an exchange period, and they don't want to be with you anymore. They don't care that you've been with each other for 3 to 4 years. They don't want to be with you anymore because they would rather go away and be single in that period rather than stay with you during that period. It's very easy to look at this situation and think, I guess they have a point because they're going away, and look, what will be. So maybe it's the right person, but the wrong time. And we convince ourselves that this is the right person at the wrong time because it's the familiar path. It is the path that is comfortable for us, that we've become habitual towards. But there's a lot of beauty and freedom and liberation in, taking the mindset and perspective and thinking, you know what, if this person doesn't want to be with me and they want to just throw 4 years away like that because they just want to be essentially single and, maybe go and just sleep around with other people and have some liberation to go and do that when they're away overseas and throw away our romance and the love that we've built over 4 years. This is not a factor of right person, wrong time. This is a factor of this person doesn't want that love with me anymore, probably doesn't love me anymore if they want to do that. And I need to realize that, recognize that, and realize that this is just the wrong person entirely. And the moment you take that perspective is the moment that you realize that the path least trotted on, whilst it's scary, whilst it's overwhelming, whilst it's new and fresh, is needed at this time period. The trodden path is trodden for a reason, and there's no new growth coming from that clearly. Someone in that relationship has put a stop to it and has outlined that they don't believe that this is valuable to them anymore. So maturity is realizing that, yes, I can see what this person has done here, and I don't want to try to convince myself that there is some happy ending to this. There's some Disneyfication ending to this. This person is willing to throw that away. I need to get out of my comfort zone now, take the new path, the scary path, the overwhelming path. But boy, there's going to be so much growth to come from that as well.
Yeah, I think we also just, in the modern dating market, it's scary because if you love and admire and have this mutual attraction for someone this much, knowing that, it just wasn't the right time for you, it's an upsetting thought, because the thing is, if you loved someone this much, for you, it's hard to accept that there is another way. It's hard to accept that you can admire someone else as much as you admired this person, because it's hard to find love, especially in the modern dating game. It's a struggle for a lot of people. It's a real
Bloody
struggle.
Oath it is.
So
know all about that too much. So
exactly. So the problem there is that you're then more seduced by just staying in your own fantasy of what could have been.
Yeah.
And I think we then get so stuck on these outlier situations. So like, as an example, like there was this story that I heard. I think you hear stories like this actually more commonly than you think, but they are still rare, which is the idea that two high school sweethearts, they were dating one another and, they broke up for whatever reason. Then they went on to their own separate paths. They got married and both their spouses passed away. But then they reunite when they're 60s and they get married. And, to a lot of people, that's a clear example of right person, wrong time, because they ended up with each other. But it's really not, because the people would have grieved each other. They probably would have believed they aren't the right people. They probably also, in the span of 40, 50 years, they would have grown so much as well as individuals. Who they are as individuals would have changed. Their values would have changed. Their inner being would have changed.
The whole butterfly effect of that situation wouldn't have happened if they didn't disassociate at the start, right?
Yeah, you think they were thinking about their high school sweethearts when they were married and had kids? Probably not. They probably looked at it in the similar way you explained the whole radical acceptance aspect, which is they appreciated the experience for what it was, moved on, and established a life that they were happy with. And unfortunately, both spouses passed away. They moved on, and the two high school sweethearts reunited. But the most unhealthy thing to do there is to try and fixate on that.
Yeah.
Because I think anytime there's an outlier in a situation, and you see it all the time with long distance relationships. I'm not advising against long distance relationships, but it's worth noting that the statistics with LDR relationships are, a very low success rate, and they're tough. But what we'll do naturally is that when something is quite unlikely to happen, we will fixate on the miracle stories, the outliers, right? But that's just the human preoccupation. We love to look at outliers as a way to kind of make us feel better.
Yeah.
That's a separate point in and of itself. For those who are stuck and they want to move on, what are some of the things you would advise them of?
You mentioned a good point before, which was writing down some non-negotiables, but I think a really nice way in which you can move on is to remind yourself of the bad things about the person that you were with, because it's so easy to get caught up in the good things about this person. And that's what makes us think, God, this was the right person, but it was just truly the wrong time. So easy to get caught up in that because it's familiar to us. It's habitual. It's the path that we've only known to take, which I mentioned before. But by reminding yourself of the reasons why it didn't work out, why this person wasn't good for you, why this person wasn't wanting to be with you, why they were so willing to throw away your relationship of 3 to 4 years and go and fuck off overseas and, just try sleep around with other people and have the freedom to be single there. Why they were so willing to do that is important to remind yourself about, because that is enough to, I think, be able to move on, to remind yourself of this person just not wanting to be with you and why and how they went about doing that. Because we often remind ourselves of the good things about a person, but we don't remind ourselves of the reasons in which it didn't work out, which is why it leads us to the mindset of right person, wrong time. And we also get married to the idea and the fantasy of what could have been, the Disneyfication, which links to your story of the two 60-year-olds that you just mentioned, is that we get married to the Disneyfication, we get married to the potential narrative of what could be, what could our relationship look like if it was, in quotations, the right time. And life isn't that. You soon realize that if they are the right person, they will make whatever circumstances work. If you have to travel to and from work every couple of weeks, but you want to really form a connection with someone and develop something with someone, if they are the right person, you will make that work. If they're the wrong person, that wouldn't work. We experience trials and tribulations throughout relationships, but if they're the right person, you see that trial, that tribulation, that challenge, you see it as something that could potentially bind you guys closer together, something that you can work towards together. And if you find yourself stuck in a relationship and the partner you're with or you yourself are constantly fixated on the hardships of it and, why it might not be able to work and the anxieties of, but you're going to go away overseas for a month. I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. We're in a day and age where we've got the fucking internet at our fingertips, where you can FaceTime, where you can call, where you can do all sorts of things on the phone if you want. And if you truly love that person, you will make it work. And that's why I get so fed up, frustrated, disappointed when I see those relationships that have gone through a beautiful 3 years together. Someone wants to go overseas, do an exchange period, and they use that as an excuse to end things. Yes, it's hard, but I believe that if it's worth it, you will make it work.
Yeah, if they're the right person, they're the right person. It's a binary thing, and I loved what Matthew Hussey said about the whole idea. It's like we look at success through binary terms, and you never hear the team that lost the World Cup being like, we were champions if only the goalie didn't save the last penalty kick.
It either goes in or it doesn't.
Correct. And I think if you adopt that same philosophy that there is no right person, wrong time. If it's the wrong time, it's just the right person. Because with the right person, time doesn't actually matter that much, does it? Because you are going to be willing to make it work. And I think adopting that mindset's really important. I just want to quickly revisit what you said about writing down all the qualities as to why they were not the right person is so important, because again, we get fixated on those reasons. If we have the premise that they're the right person, there's a bunch of reasons. Like that's the label at the top, and we've got all these reasons going up that establish why in our belief system they were the right person. But if you can also kind of oppose to that wrong person and then formulate reasons why they're not the wrong person, all you need is really one or two to solidify that. Because with the right person, you won't really have any reasons as to why they're wrong in the first place. But all it takes is one wrong reason for your belief of them as being the right person to be completely busted. So I think that's a really, really crucial exercise. The last thing you have to understand, and you treat this like you would with any other breakup, funnily enough, is understanding that there is no one person, right? There are a lot of people in this world, and there are some people, less in quantity, that would just be more compatible with you. And that's okay. And the fact that you were able to experience this love and admiration for one person is a testament to the fact that you'll probably be able to experience that with another person.
Love it. On that note, guys, we hope you have taken some good things away from this episode. It's definitely a topic that, I've grappled with a bit over the years, and I feel like I've formulated a bit more of a response now in which I'm more confident in, which is, all the ideas in which we've discussed today. But it takes a lot of time to get there, and especially if you find yourself grieving a past relationship that you still feel like it can happen and it can work out for you. Hopefully this episode has helped you in navigating that situation. And as we always say, our DMs are always open. So please do reach out to us if you have any questions, if you have anything that you would like to share. We would love to hear from you.
Lots of love, everyone. Be kind to yourselves if you are going through this, and have a happy Tuesday and happy week.